Hey everyone, Gerard Scarpacey here again for another little lesson. This is kind of part two in a little mini series doing with my friends from Davines. If you were here about a week ago, I worked with one of these 50-50 colors done by Allison Daza and did something that was more like one length looking with the 50-50 color. Today, I've got another one of collection using Davines color by Allison Daza, and Kelly will post the formulas and you guys can get a little more information about that. This is obviously more vibrant. You've got these two reds, a deeper one and then a brighter one. And this time around I wanted to do something really layered, really kind of like shag-like. I thought it would just be kind of very, obviously it's going to be very dramatic. And that's kind of what we're going for, where the one length was maybe a bit more subtle. All right, so very simple approach that I use very often to do the kind of modern shag. 3 panels, one that kind of comes like an upside down triangle on each side in the middle, drops out the fringe and drops out the hair from the crown below. First, I'll do a little bit of technical layering through the back and then add more kind of very subtle, somewhat invisible layers. So this is very simple, using a very high elevation, good strong tension, and I'm just going to cut clean at first just to get the shape in, and then I'll use a very kind of strong texture method here. So cutting just a clean line, bringing this all up, and basically cutting parallel to the floor. Because I'm going to add a lot more layers using a texturizing technique, I don't feel I need to technically overlayer this. I want there to be some additional length in here. I'm using sections that gently pivot around the head and really just over directing them slightly back onto the previous section. So up strongly, fine teeth of the comb, good strong tension that'll make it even a little bit softer here, stretching the ends of the hair will make them just pop a little bit. So a nice strong tension to get some softness in, even with a technical line like this. I'll take whatever's left here. Just taking some of the previous hair, over directing back and up onto the previous section. Okay, so you can see, starting to get a very simple technical layer. The shortest layer is falling probably about halfway to the length, which is a good start. You'll definitely be able to see the layer. Now you can see the color here. I don't know, Kelly, if you had a chance to put the formula in.
I did, yep.
So what do we have? I didn't memorize it. What do we have on the bright side?
I'm going to comment to the top here so everyone can see it. The first half is the pre-lightened. That's Progress with 10 volume, and then the other one is looks like the darker one is the Mask with Vibrochrome.
Okay, and then on this pre-lightened side was what some of the new the demi-permanent must have been put over it.
Yes.
Do you have that?
It's
Yeah, so to get this kind of vibrancy, typically, yeah, she would pre-lighten the hair, so it looks like it was pre-lightened.
With Progress and 10 volume.
All right, so again, you can see just pivoting. This is just kind of getting the technical layering in. I mean, there's so many different ways to work, I could go very free form right from the beginning. Sometimes I like to just be technical and then add texture. I try not to overthink it. I go with my feeling. I try to change it up from time to time to make the experience for myself different, to make it feel a little bit different. Obviously, I do a lot of razor cutting as well. I think it's really about your level of skill. And, maybe if you've watched many times before, you've heard me say I like to think of, hair cutting as like languages. And there are quite a few different languages. Here I'm just going to cross-check. Since we're being technical, I can see a little bit of heaviness there. So I'm coming over the head, elevating, and just looking for my balance. Tiny little bit of heaviness there. Using the new 6.5 inch HB Pro AG. The AG is for the anatomical grip. It means that the way the handles curve this way and this way. You may be familiar with that Japanese style of handle. It's very simple, but very, very comfortable, very ergonomic and anatomically correct. These scissors are made in Japan. by Naoto Takahashi, very kind of famous scissor maker, originally from the Hikari family. Now has his own factory. Elevating up and checking. So this is just a little checking before I add the texture into the back. And just been a little bit heavier on this side. It's probably body position, but I think it's cross-checkable because it's really just a dusting of excess weight here. Okay, now I'm gonna add more texture to this. So I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna use a little bit of back cutting. I'm gonna take the sections, again, pretty much the same. They're about 1 inch thick. They're not overly fine at all for this. And I'm gonna bring this together here. And now using back cutting, I'm gonna go in a little bit deeper, even into the existing layers. Just kind of pushing the scissor in, just getting little notches within. Another section. Try not to pick up too much of the previous hair each time that you do this, because you don't want to keep overly texturizing. Just going to bring that straight out from the head. Going in. So this just kind of puts a little serration in between your technical layers. I'll be gentle behind the ear here, but I still think I can do a bit. Come in and pushing in. I'm just creating a little bit more layering within my layering. Same on this side. Just take one section here and then I'll leave a little bit behind the ear. Deliberately when you're doing stuff like this, I don't particularly like to take the sections too thin because you'll just end up really taking out all the shape. You want to be a little bit more deliberate about it. So a little bit of the thicker section for me works better, especially with this type of cutting that I'm doing here. Okay, you can see starting to get that nice layered effect, really showing the drama in the color. Before we move on, the last thing that's going to be very important here is to find the corner, which should be quite strong because of the technical cutting. So that's the corner between the outline and the layering. I'll use a little bit of controlled slicing to really soften that corner a lot. Otherwise, it tends to look a little bit wiggy. Like you could see the difference if you dial in. Now it feels like it's layered all the way to the ends. Here it feels like kind of wiggy and thick on the bottom, which typically I'm not going for. I like things to look congruent, like it just kind of really flows all the way through. So just addressing that corner. I'll leave a little bit of the corner just right behind the ear just to give me room to play and make sure we don't get too weak down in that area. Simple, effective. Now we've got a really nicely layered shape in the back. So as a cutting lotion and as like a pre-styling product, I gotta have my oil milk. I really saturated before I went to work, and I'll keep re-dampening it through the hair here. I love everything about this product and what it does to the hair. Really kind of gives it a nice lived-in texture, makes it very easy to work with. It's a joy. All right, I'm gonna come to the front panel now. We'll leave this for last. So, meant to be kind of a shag for sure. So we're gonna start off by cutting in a bit of a fringe. It's dried a bit, so I'll just dampen it with water. Reactivate the milk. Should be plenty in there. So basically first I'm gonna kind of address what falls over the face. And we'll take this and just kind of drop it out for the moment, the hair on the side. What falls on the face and what falls in front of the ear, we'll just kind of tuck back behind the ears. I'm gonna come in here first, and just to make my life a little bit easier because this is so long, I'm just gonna take off some of the excess length. This won't be the final length, but it's gonna be shorter than this, so I don't need all this length. So just, if you do have someone with hair this long, why not make it a little bit easier? So now I'm going to come in, vertical section right in the middle. It's got a little bit of color from each side, which is great. Now I do want to think about where my length is going to be. So again, I'm going to elevate up nice and high. And we'll keep working with this kind of concept of square and clean, and then we'll add texture. And then we'll dial in the length. So I'm going to keep, I think they're actually a little bit shorter on these layers. I haven't addressed the, remember that length, that pre-cutting was just to get rid of unnecessary length. I'm going to cut this just a little shorter because I know I want this to kind of be eventually when I come in and do some refining where I want it to fall. Okay, now I'm going to take my sections just maybe on a very gentle pivot and bring everything straight up to the ceiling, not all the way into the middle. I don't need that much over direction here, but just pre-layering the hair, very simple. Using technical hair cutting first in kind of what I always used to call kind of, I think we use the term zones, different zones that don't necessarily connect technically, but have a very modular feel, like a piece of modular furniture. They move around, and when they move around, they connect visually. Okay, so you can see the effect of the layering there, quite simple. Now we'll do the same on this side, and then we'll begin to work to refine the texture and the length. Lots of times when I do work this way with layering and lots of texture, I like a longer shear. That's why I'm happy that we finally have, this is the longest one we've ever made. So for those of you that, for whatever reason, like long shears, whether it be scissor over comb or cutting outlines, now we've got it for you. Okay, so now, coming in, again, pinching. I can see where I don't want to add any more layers on the top, but I want to gently remove the excess length using slicing. Come right into where I want it to sit, right at the eyebrow. Sections over-directed slightly to build a little bit of weight into the corner. Over-directed slightly towards the center. Opening and closing without closing all the way. And slicing through. Going in with a little bit of deeper point cutting. Another great thing for a longer scissor, you can keep your hand further away and visually see what you're doing a little bit more, but still go in a little deeper. Okay, for the same on the opposite side, I'll just tilt the head toward me. Over direct slightly towards the center. And pinch and slice. Pinch and slice. Over directing slightly just to build a little bit of weight in the corner for the blend through the temple. All of this can be brought straight up now for some deeper point cutting as well. Hold my fingers down a little bit lower. And T, I don't want to make this shorter, so I'm just going in T to my fingers, not on a diagonal at all. Let's let this dry off with a little bit of product in it. I'm going to use a little bit of the volume boosting mousse, which will be kind of my finishing product. So we'll put a little product here as this begins to dry. Okay, now we've got this small little area dropped out here where we can get kind of dramatic here, to be honest with you. The length and everything is going to come from this area. So in this area, we can really kind of open up the face more. I'm not super worried about keeping excessive length at the bottom here. So again, you could, if you wanted something a little bit safer, you could keep more length, but I'm going to go for it. So you'll notice I'll hold this hair down. I'll come in with my scissor right about where the bang ended, and I'll open and close without closing all the way to about the bridge of the nose. Then I want to go a little lower, cheekbone, to lip, and then a little lower than that, tip of the nose to the chin, and then chin to the throat. You want to kind of start to get a little bit of a rhythm there, and then I can dial it in.
Just want to take a moment and say hello to everyone watching. Sid Sutong is loving it.
Hey Sid, buddy, how you doing? I think I heard you're coming to the States. I saw something that you posted, doing some, I guess, vacation, visiting family, and maybe doing some education. When are you going to be here?
And Natasha's loving the reds. They're beautiful.
Yeah, so these are Davines reds using, you know, this side is pre-lifted.
Using Progress in 10 volume, and then the second is a mask with Vibrochrome.
Yeah. Pre-lifted and then toned with View, which is Davines's demi-permanent color line, which is just all the rage. So again, doing the same on this side. A little bit trickier on this side if you're right-handed. You kind of have to come around backhand. And, you know, just like anything in haircutting, you have to have, I always think of the game concentration, if anybody remembers that, where you have to like remember where things are. So using visual cues really helps with stuff like that. Really thinking, you know, where did I start, which bone, et cetera, et cetera. All right, we're gonna let that settle in for a minute. Again, we've got some of the oil milk in here. We're also now adding on top a little bit of the volume boosting mousse from the More Inside line. You know, I like to kind of add product as I work with the hair. I probably should get some in the back too. So I can really, as I'm working, visualize what's happening. Scrunching that in. As with all Davines products, the aroma is amazing. A big part of the brand, I think, is aroma. I think it's definitely some of my favorite. And not, you know, traditional in any way. It doesn't smell like any other hair product I've ever worked with. Okay, so now we've got a length here and a length here. Now I don't want to perfectly technically connect those because I think that will make it too traditional feeling. But I want to make sure that the shortest piece here isn't longer than the bangs and the longest piece here isn't too much longer than these layers. So I have a reference between the two. I'm going to drop her down lower. And I'm going to turn her this way because this angle is going to be more acute from short to long. So I want my scissor, personally, I like it coming from the shorter place. I feel like I have more control. So we've got a lot of hair right now. There is the shortest piece. Now I want to look at this length, and this can reach to about the length of the bang, maybe a tiny bit longer if I know I'm going to do a little bit more detail. So, you know, that's like my shortest piece there, give or take. Normally I don't cut it like that, but just to kind of really dramatically show you, and I can always detail it more. And then this is my layering at the back. I'm going to go to about, let's say here, and see where that falls over those layers. All right, now we'll fine tune it. Again, you know, what I just did, people do it. I usually don't, but I did now, so never say you don't. I think that's what's fun about hair cutting or hairdressing or art in general. All right, so now we'll dial it in. I'll comb off the curve of the head. I'll angle from this shorter point towards that longer point. Over direct a little bit forward. Keep that a little clean, get some of those little hairs off my fingers, little danglers, and work towards that longer point. Now, you know, you've got a lot more freedom in the back. I mean, you wouldn't want it to be too long in the back because it would just, you know, look weird and disconnected. But in the front, you really have to make sure that it doesn't fall a ton longer than your bang. You just want to have enough hair to do some detail. You know, cut a few little snips in, and I think we're good. But if it's like really long and really solid, it's going to be too much hair to deal with. Okay, so again, now I'm working on the side in that little pre-triangle area, kind of upside down triangle. If your length is very, very long, you know, you may have to over-direct more towards the center or even past the center. In this case, we're just kind of like a shoulder length, kind of a shag. So I think going straight up to the ceiling will leave me with enough length through the sides. But you know, depending on how much longer you want this hair to be, you can take it from there. You can still get a lot of layering, but you might either go to the center or even past the center to build that extra length down towards the bottom. Using simple technical hair cutting combined with some what we call freehand, texture cutting, freeform cutting. So getting in a strong, you know, sometimes it's my favorite way to work. It was for many years probably the predominant way that I worked. When I worked at Vidal Sassoon, it was very important to build strong shapes, and then as you know, fashion began to get a little bit looser, we would freehand those shapes. And it's still, I think, a very, very great way to work, especially in the salon, you know, where you need dependable techniques, and you also need things that you can do in a timely manner. So here you can see the over direction has left me with plenty of length, even a little more than I need. We're getting lots of layering towards the face that we can then dial in. Working on the opposite side, now body position, you know, everyone really has to find what works for them. When I'm cutting these kind of angles, I really like to work from the shortest point. So I kind of change the concept of body position here, really so that I feel like I can get the best angle possible. But you could move your body around to the opposite side if you felt that that worked for you. I think, you know, a lot of it has to do with your hands, the size of your hands, the way that things kind of feel and flow. Using the guide from the first side. The thing that won't change is the over direction. It's going to go straight up to the ceiling. So I just have to be conscious, since I'm on the opposite side of the head, I have to be really conscious to make sure I don't over direct too much. So I could cross check every few sections. I could really, you know, if I'm right in front of the mirror, that would be probably one of the best things I could do, is really just make sure that I look before I cut, and then I'm not over, take a glance in the mirror, see where that hair is being combed to. That would help a lot. Straight up to the ceiling. Use what's around you as a reference. Combing through. Beautiful vibrant color, combination of, on this side, we've got the mask with Vibrochrome, which is the permanent line from Davines, you know, kind of the foundation line used for so many things, permanent hair color. And then on this brighter, more vivid side, the hair was pre-lightened. Did you say that was mask bleach?
Yep, Progress.
So Progress is from Century of Light.
Yep. With 10 volume.
With 10 volume. And then we had View put over it. View is the demi-permanent line from Davines that you can get all these amazing colors with. You can see, you know, this last time I worked with now these were all colored by Alison Daza. Fantastic colorist and educator with Davines. She colored this girl, which was more of a subtle idea of the two different colors, two different blondes, the apricots and the peaches. And here we worked with a much heavier kind of one length look with this trend of this 50-50 color. Then today I thought, well, let's go the opposite direction. Since this one's really bold, let's really layer it through and go kind of with the modern shag trend that so many of us, I think we're enjoying it because it's a haircut, you know? There's things to do, layering and texturizing, so, you know, I think that that's great. And I love to see that a trend in cutting, you know, kind of came from social media. I really think it did. We saw a lot of trends, obviously, in color and styling, but cutting was, you know, I don't think a lot of things were really kind of catalyzed from social media, but I definitely think that the shag trend was. Okay, so now we've got some extra length that falls over here, and this is when we go back to working a little bit freehand. So grabbing some of that excess length, maybe even giving it a little extra twist, opening and closing without closing all the way. A little twist towards the center, that just makes it even a little bit more erratic. And just looking to see that it doesn't obscure the underneath. Twisting, just gently. Very gentle pressure here, especially if you've got a really beautiful sharp scissor like this AG that I'm working with, the Hairbrain Pro AG. Now back into this area, I'll go back to what I was doing before, working from the inside again. Really gentle pressure because there's just pieces coming through from the top. So you can just see if there's a little bit of stuff there. And this is what, we kind of call the drop. It's just like this little piece between the bang and the bulk of the hair. Go a little bit deeper here. Okay. While I'm here, I'll look at the length here because there may be a little bit of excess length. Again, point cutting. Then we'll come back here and then we'll get a lot more texture in those top layers. So now twisting. On both sides, I twisted towards the center. I don't think it makes a huge difference what direction you twist in, but why not be consistent, right? If it does make a difference, be consistent. Twisting towards the center. Working my way out into the corners. We're in Southern California, for those of you that don't know, and we're about to have a massive heat wave. The next couple of days is going to be 90 plus degrees. So I know some of you guys are still living through winter, but winter is definitely over here. Spring is full on. I'd even say it's summer. How's the weather wherever you are? Come back here. Again, really gentle pressure. I'm just trying to get any longer hairs that are falling over what I did originally without really going into this too aggressively. Then judge if you need to add anything in here. Okay, now through those layers in the top, I just want to add a little more texture in the middle, so we've kind of dealt with that, but this is still quite blunt here. Again, I'm going to use a bit of the controlled slicing, just coming in, opening and closing without closing all the way. So, to me, it kind of keeps the ends, some of those little ends defined, but it really kind of pops some separation in and space.
Is the curvature important in this slicing versus just point cutting parallel to your fingers?
I think that there's definitely subtle differences. I think that this creates a little bit more space and movement. It's not just about like thinning the hair. Sometimes where pointing parallel is. I think this is creating more direction and pushing the hair. I think it's subtle, and it's really up to the artist to experience the subtlety of it. I mean, could I have just deep point cut here? Yes, of course. Could do a lot of different things, but I think, as I say very often, the difference between good and great is just a very, very subtle thing. A few little stroke or direction of the scissor. And I think that that's the lifelong pursuit. And again, I know for me, it's just like, I always want to be doing things differently. I just get bored easily. It's kind of one of the reasons why I became a hairdresser. And I just go through different phases, especially with things like texturizing. And then, those little phases make little differences. Now, again, I still think most important is a strong foundation, regardless of anything. Like, I wouldn't want to even talk to a colorist who had no idea what color theory was, They could be the most creative freehand painter in the world, but if they didn't understand color theory, I'd be really nervous about it, regardless of how creative they are. And I think, with hair cutting, that's, geometric hair cutting, the foundations of understanding angle, shape, corners, graduation, layer, you name it. And I think that that's, just like anything, you spend the beginning of your career really getting comfortable learning that stuff until it just becomes second nature, like learning to read or something, got to learn the alphabet. But then, it's not like when you read, you say G, F. You just kind of see the words and intuitively can interpret them. I think that's what great hair cutting is.
Diane Curry is loving this. And Natasha's mentioning it's 50 degrees in northern Utah.
Ooh. Well, 50's not too bad.
Yeah, no, that's great.
That's not too bad.
At least it's not 95.
All right, so we've got a good combination of oil as our base, oil all-in-one milk. I really saturated the hair. And now working with this is a volume boosting mousse from the More Inside line. Again, incredible packaging as always from Davines. You know, one of the things, so many things I love about Davines, family owned, Italian, really innovative packaging that what I've always found, you know, when I was a salon owner, I had Davines in my salon. It just makes your salon cooler. You know, a wall full of Davines, it's almost like having art because of the way the packaging is. And then the aromas, if you're not familiar with the aromas, they're just fantastic, fantastic aromas, very unique. And that kind of, you know, really adds to the sensory experience for your guests, for your clients. I think they're almost kind of addictive. Oil is something that's definitely addictive. The smell of it, if you've never smelled it, run out there and try it. Okay, I'm gonna let her dry naturally. With the product in here, you can see very, very simple shape. A take on this idea, you know, last week we did something a bit more heavy, more one length looking using the razor. Here we've gone into something much more of a shag, more layered, working with 2 mannequins colored by Alison Daza, using this kind of 50-50 trend that we've been seeing a lot of. Went stronger this week and went into, obviously, a lot more layered of a shape. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Always a pleasure to present for you. And big love to our friends at Davines. Thank you, Allison, for the color.